two of the most fearsome creatures in Tolkien's legendarium, a Balrog of Morgoth and the mighty Smaug the Golden, one wreathed in shadow and flame, the other armoured in gold and fire. But what if they fought? What if Durin's Bane, the terror of Khazad-dûm, faced off against Smaug, the scourge of Erebor? Who would win in this clash of titans? This isn't just a simple monster battle. We're talking about a creature of divine origin facing a living embodiment of greed and destruction. In today's episode, we'll explore how they might meet, where they might battle, and most importantly, who would win. By the end, you'll have a new appreciation for the power of Tolkien's most terrifying monsters. So, grab your Lember's bread, call in the eagles, and prepare yourself for the ultimate clash of fire and shadow. This one is huge. Let's get started. Let's start with our first combatant, Smaug the Golden, the last great fire drake of the Third Age. Smaug was more than just a dragon, he was the dragon. Dragons in Tolkien's world aren't like your average fairy tale monsters. They're deeply tied to Morgoth, the original Dark Lord. Morgoth created dragons during the First Age as his ultimate war beasts, and by the time we get to the Third Age, Smaug is one of the last of his kind. Unlike most wild beasts, Smaug was clever. He didn't just rely on brute strength. He used his wit and voice as weapons. His hypnotic, almost magical ability to manipulate others with words was a trait seen in older, more powerful dragons like Glaurung. Smaug inherited this gift, and you can see it clearly when he toys with Bilbo during their encounter. His physical power was unmatched. His fire breath could melt gold and turn stone to slag. His armoured scales made him nearly invincible, save for that one weak spot. But what makes Smaug so deadly is his arrogance. He believes himself to be unstoppable, and sometimes that's the deadliest weakness of all. Now let's meet his opponent, Durin's Bane. You've probably heard of him as the Balrog of Moria, but his story goes much deeper. Durin's Bane was one of the Balrogs of Morgoth, which means, like Sauron, he was originally a Maia. Yep, the same class of being as Gandalf and Saruman. The difference? He served Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, and unlike Gandalf, he embraced destruction and rage. Balrogs were Morgoth's enforcers during the First Age, waging war on elves, dwarves and men. When Morgoth was defeated and cast into the void, most Balrogs were destroyed, but a few survived. Durin's Bane fled underground, hiding in the depths beneath Khazad-dûm, Moria. He remained there for thousands of years until the dwarves accidentally woke him while mining for mithril. This Balrog wasn't just a fire monster, he was an entity of shadow and flame. His body was wrapped in darkness, and his weapons were legendary, a massive flaming sword and a whip of fire. If you've seen The Fellowship of the Ring, you know how terrifying this guy is. Gandalf himself had to fight him for days on the Endless Stair before finally defeating him. Let that sink in. Gandalf the White barely beat him. Now here's where things get interesting. How could these two legendary forces of destruction actually meet? After all, one is buried deep beneath a mountain, and the other rules the skies. Here's the scenario we're going with. Smaug, after his conquest of Erebor, has become greedy and restless. He's already claimed the Lonely Mountain, but dragons are never satisfied. Driven by rumours of mithril, one of the most valuable metals in all of Middle-earth, Smaug flies south, drawn to Khazad-dûm. It's not too far from Erebor, and since dragons are creatures of greed, it makes perfect sense for him to seek it out. Meanwhile, deep beneath Moria, Durin's Bane senses the disturbance. He feels Smaug's presence as he nears the mountain. Fire calls to fire. It's as if two storm clouds are destined to collide. Slowly the Balrog ascends from the depths, his whip dragging against stone as he rises to meet this intruder. In this version of events, Smaug breaches Moria through a broken passage, finding himself in the legendary Chamber of Mazarbul. The Balrog is already waiting. Imagine it. The endless underground chambers, narrow stone bridges and bottomless pits. It's the perfect battleground. Moria was once a dwarven kingdom, but now it's a tomb. Unlike an open field, Moria's narrow spaces make Smaug's flight impossible. No swooping down from the sky, no evasion. It's tight, it's claustrophobic, and it's Durin's Bane's home turf. Smaug tries to maneuver, but the tight spaces force him to fight on the ground. Durin's Bane emerges from the shadows, his whip already ablaze, and the two stare each other down, fire against fire. Their roars echo like thunderclaps shattering stone. The deep thud of heavy footsteps echoes through the ancient stone halls. Dust shakes loose from cracks in the ceiling as Durin's Bane approaches, his fiery outline glowing brighter with each step. The low rumble of his movements reverberates like distant thunder. From the other side of the chamber, Smaug slithers forward, his claws clicking on the stone, scraping like daggers on glass. His eyes, two golden furnaces, lock onto the approaching shadow.
You smell of old ash.
Smaug's deep voice echoes, curling through the cavern like rolling thunder. His nostrils flare as he exhales twin puffs of smoke.
Did you crawl from the tomb of some forgotten king? Or are you simply the shadow of something greater?
Durin's Bane says nothing. Balrogs do not speak with words, they answer with action. Without warning, he strikes. The flaming whip tears through the air, a glowing streak of molten light. Smaug snaps his head back, narrowly avoiding the strike. The whip crashes into a stone pillar with a resounding boom, splintering it into a rain of debris. Stone chunks scatter, and one of them smashes into Smaug's side. The dragon snarls, his teeth bared in rage.
Faster than I expected.
This time, Smaug moves first. His jaw unhinges, and with a deep rattling inhale, he unleashes his signature attack. A torrent of fire. The orange and red flames rush forward, a wave so hot it could reduce steel to slag. The glow fills the chamber with blinding molten light. Flames race toward the Balrog, consuming everything in their path. The roar of the fire drowns out all sound, but as the flames subside, a figure remains, unburned, unharmed. Durin's Bane stands in the centre of the inferno, his shadow stretching long against the walls. The flames only seem to make him stronger. His aura of darkness swirls, his fiery sword glowing brighter, his whip flickering like the tail of a living flame. Fire cannot harm fire. Smaug's eyes narrow, his patience is gone. He lunges forward like a coiled spring, claws extended, his massive bulk moving with startling speed. His talons rake across the Balrog's chest, sending a shower of sparks and molten slag into the air. The Balrog stumbles. For the first time, the beast of shadow loses his footing, his feet grinding molten lines into the stone as he is pushed back.
Not so invincible now, are you?
Smaug snarls, his voice thick with pride. He presses the attack. His powerful hind legs slam into the ground, propelling him forward. His wings snap open for balance, his claws aimed for the Balrog's throat. But the Balrog's reaction is faster than expected. The flaming whip lashes out, catching Smaug's tail with a deafening crack. The dragon roars in fury as the fiery coils twist around his tail like a serpent.
What trickery is this?
He bellows, thrashing his tail against the walls in a desperate attempt to free himself. The Balrog digs in his feet, his shadow-wrapped form barely visible beneath the glow of his flames. He pulls with raw, ancient strength. The sound of stone grinding echoes through the hall. Smaug is yanked backward, his claws scraping lines in the stone as he tries to resist. The Balrog raises his flaming sword with both hands, and with a roar as deep as a volcanic eruption, he brings it down with a brutal cleaving strike. At the last second, Smaug turns, letting the blade crash against his armoured back. Sparks explode in every direction as the sword meets Smaug's impenetrable scales. The impact shakes the ground. Cracks web out from the point of impact. Both creatures stand still for a moment, their breath heavy, smoke rising from both of them.
You'll have to try harder than that, beast of shadow.
Smaug growls, his mouth twists into a vicious grin. With his tail still bound, Smaug tries a new approach. His claws dig into the stone beneath him, and with a grunt of effort he rips free an enormous chunk of the floor. The stone crumbles and falls, causing the ground beneath them both to give way. The entire floor collapses. Both titans fall. Dust and rubble rain down, blocking all light from the scene. For a moment there is only silence, then a glow, faint at first but growing. Two lights flicker in the darkness, Smaug's golden eyes and the orange glow of the Balrog's flames. Two fires reignited. With a burst of flame, Smaug rises from the rubble, wings extended. His chest swells, his eyes burning with newfound fury. His gaze locks onto his enemy. Above him, the Balrog rises too, dragging his whip behind him, fire and smoke curling from his shoulders. This time, Smaug takes the high ground. He claws his way up the rubble pile, gaining the elevation he needs.
Come, demon, let me see you burn.
He roars. A pillar of fire explodes from Smaug's mouth, a stream of molten heat that races downward like a waterfall of pure destruction. It pours over the Balrog, coating him in unrelenting flames. The heat is so intense that it turns stone into magma pools. Smoke fills the chamber. The only light is from the flickering pools of molten rock, but in the smoke, two eyes glow brighter than before. The Balrog leaps. He soars through the air like a meteor, his shadowed form outlined in the glow of fire and magma. In a single move, he wraps his whip around Smaug's neck. The snap echoes like a thunderclap. Smaug's eyes widen, his wings flapping wildly as he thrashes to free himself. But this time, it's too late.
You will fall.
With a mighty yank, the Balrog pulls Smaug down from his perch. The dragon slams into the ground. The impact sends debris flying. Stone fragments rain down on both of them. The Balrog approaches slowly, deliberately, dragging his fiery sword along the ground. Sparks and smoke trail behind him. He stands over Smaug, his eyes twin beacons of glowing rage. His shadow stretches long and wide, eclipsing all light in the chamber.
This world will be mine, not yours, not Sauron's. Mine.
Smaug roars with his last breath. His talons dig into the ground, and he lunges with all his might. His claws sink into the Balrog's chest, twisting and tearing at the flame and shadow. For a moment, the light in the Balrog's body flickers.
Victory is mine.
Smaug wheezes. But then, the whip tightens around Smaug's leg. He is yanked downward with impossible force. His chest slams into the ground. The Balrog raises his sword. One final blow. The sword pierces Smaug's heart. The great dragon gasps, his golden eyes wide with shock. Slowly, the glow fades from his eyes. His head falls limp against the stone. The only sound is the hiss of cooling magma. The Balrog pulls his sword free. He turns to the darkness beyond. With his last roar, flames spiral out of his body, stretching like wings. As he steps away, shadow consumes him, and silence returns to the ancient halls of Moria. Alright, here's where it gets controversial. If Smaug had more room to fly, it might be a different story, but in the depths of Moria, he's at a disadvantage. Durin's Bane is relentless, and he doesn't rely on clever words or manipulation. He just destroys. With that in mind, I'm giving this win to Durin's Bane. Well, there you have it, the Battle of the Ages. Do you agree with the outcome? Could Smaug have won if it was an open-air fight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your takes, your theories, and your wildest what-if scenarios. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We cover everything from Middle-earth to the Undying Lands. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Namaria, friends.